Good evening. This is Ford Spalding, Chair of the Community Center Building Committee, and following the guidance issued by the state in 2020 regarding the open meeting law, this public meeting will be held remotely, and individuals wishing to participate may do so by utilizing Zoom video conference technology. Let me poll the board so we confirm who's here. Luciana Berti,
I'm here.
Barry Sobolewski,
Here.
Dick Malcolm,
Here.
and I'm here also. I think that's it for the building committee. First order of business is to approve the minutes of October 11. Motion to approve.
Motion.
For a second.
Second.
Any discussion? I'll poll the board. Luciana Berti,
Yes.
Barry Sobolewski,
Yes.
Dick Malcolm,
Yes.
Ford Spalding, yes. Next, the minutes of October 26.
Ford, you keep missing me off the building
Yeah,
committee.
And Ruth Townsend, I apologize. How can I miss you? Minutes of October 26. I'll accept a motion to approve.
Moved.
A second.
Second.
Any discussion? Ruth Townsend,
Yes.
Deanna Berti,
Yes.
Barry Sobolewski,
Yes.
Dick Malcolm, and Ford
Yes.
Spalding, yes. I'll now turn the meeting over to Alice Steves for our construction progress schedule, etc.
Thank you, Ford. Thanks everyone for joining. So I broke down the construction progress into the month of October because that's what we're going to be approving as far as the contractor's payment. But then it's also November 20th right now. So I wanted to make sure that you had the latest update as of today. So that will be the second section. And then we have the ongoing activities and upcoming activities. So during the month of October, the main activities were demolition. Demolition started on the 2nd of October, and they were completed by the 27th. Once the buildings were demolished, excavations for the new building started. And with that, some of asphalt demolition also took place in the month of October. During the month of November, the excavations continued for the new buildings. That is the gym and the pavilion buildings. Those were complete, for the most part, completed in the month of November. And once with that completed, the FRP stands for formwork reinforcing and placement of concrete. That started up for the pavilion building. So I should delete that. At the 1910 building that's staying, the building shoring was installed. And that was in order to enable the demolition of the facade. There's a good chunk of the facade in the back that's going to come off, as well as demolition of the existing footings that are going to get rebuilt. So the building facade demolition actually completed today. And the building, the existing footings demolition is going to start up next. In addition, during the month of November, we now have access to the second floor of the 1910 building. So if you drive by, you might be able to see some wooden stairs in the front of the building on Springdale. That gives you access to the second floor. Activities that are ongoing right now. So right now we're very much into the formwork reinforcing and placement. You're going to see in the pictures that I'm going to show you. And we're going to continue with with those activities in the next couple of weeks. And we're also, as I mentioned earlier, we're going to start up with the building shored up, the facade of the 1910 building back taken down, or the portion of it. We're going to be starting the demolition of the existing footings in the 1910 building. Do we have any questions? All right.
There's been a lot of progress. I was away for a couple of days, and there's out there today, and there's tremendous progress is being made, which is great.
That is correct, Ford. So, we obviously some, schedule delays, and M. O'Connor is accelerating the schedule. They have a couple additional crews in the concrete, self-perform, additional crew members, and it's going to be the same with the steel. So it is, with the demolition complete, they're moving pretty fast now. So let's look at some photos.
And if anybody wants to go out, please let Al or myself know and go out. It's impressive what's going on.
Yeah, there's a lot more to see now. So if you want to take a walk, just let me know. So you probably saw some of these pictures, but I wanted to show them because this is essentially, what took place during the month of October. So on the left, as I mentioned, demolition started in the on October 2nd with the 1930 building. The picture on the right shows the next day, the 1930 building essentially, coming down. By the 10th, the 11th of October, the 1930 building was no longer there, including the slabs. And all that was remaining is the perimeter retaining walls. By 11/1, both buildings were demolished and the excavations were well underway.
You want to
So-
just, I think it's worth looking when you look at that picture. Talk about what I'll call the soil. I think it's like a beach, but the soil that is here. It's to me, it's amazing.
Yeah, it's exactly like being on the beach. It's really strange walking in there. You feel like you're in a sandbox or something. So pretty cool.
So
it's
it's
good.
very, very deep, and I guess it extends all the way to the old Lutazi pit, right, which is on the other side of the Channing Pond. But it's amazing.
Yeah, and it's great soil, so it can support the foundations. No deep foundations or anything required here. So good soil. All right, so I'm gonna jump back a little bit. October 13th, or I think the 11th was when the demolition moved from the 1930 building to the 1970 building. So the picture on the left is from October 13, and by October 24th, the building was gone, and there was only some slabs that were remaining. As you can see here, they have a good chunk of slab there that they're moving away. Moving on. By the beginning of November, the buildings were taken down and excavations for the foundations were well underway. And this picture on the right it's for the pavilion building that was taken last week. And you can see the formwork for all the footings. It's done, as well as the reinforcing. So this was already inspected and ready for pouring concrete.
Building inspector was out there and he inspected it, and so that's good.
Yeah, inspections were good on it. All the rebar was inspected by the third-party materials testing company. And then a picture on the left shows the progress as of today. So all the footings already cast, and we have the reinforcing for the foundation walls, and formwork for those walls is gonna start next. The picture on the right, this is within the essentially like the gym, the gym building, as I call it. And this was taken last Thursday, and essentially it's showing the fire protection holding tank that was put in place after the pad was poured. It was poured the day before on Wednesday afternoon, along with a couple of the footings that you can kind of see here on the right. So this is going to be the deepest part of the building, and I think the bottom of this is like 20 feet, maybe a little bit more below the first floor slab. So that's a pretty deep hole, as you can see here. And then picture on the left is today, just showing some of the footings that are being formed next around that tank location. Picture on the right, just if you go to the side, you see a bunch of soil stockpiles, and they're pulling all of the rocks out of it so they can backfill. So they're going to reuse all this soil and compact it under the building footprint.
We haven't had to bring any soil or any rocks or anything like that in, correct? I mean, we're using all that's there.
Correct. Yeah. There is some stone for like some backfilling that's needed, for example, like around the fire protection tank. But for the most part, all of the soil is going to be reused. It's good soil. All right. In the 1910 building, the picture on the left shows what it looked like in the beginning of October. So a portion of the slabs were to be demolished. As you can see here, those were almost gone at that point. Picture on the right was taken on the 13th of November, and that's showing the shoring going on in the basement level. And moving to today, you can see the big opening in the 1910 building. All of that was taken out in order to connect to the new building. So that's pretty much done, except for like a small portion there, but complete for the most part. And then, there was an concrete entrance here that they cut and removed last week as well. That's it for pictures. Do we have any questions? Right. Next item on the agenda is the construction schedule. There's a number of schedule items that we're working with the contractor on. And so, but I guess, big picture is that officially we have not extended the contract duration, not yet. We're working with the contractor. They're probably going to be giving some time extension. We just haven't been able to agree on what that number is going to be yet. So we're still working on this. Any questions on schedule? Moving on to the
But they're
budget.
working very hard to catch up on anything lost because of abatement and all that. So they want to finish it ahead of schedule, and they're really intending to do that.
Al,
That's correct.
hey, Al,
Go
Buck
ahead.
Springer. I see a range of days on the far right on that column. Is that the estimates that people give you? So we run from pretty close to a month and a half late. Is that right? Am I reading it right?
I would say that right now, on the right, so the column on the right, so for example, if you look at the 47 days, actually, I don't know
Yeah.
why that's showing. I don't know why that's showing 47 days there. I think a better one. Actually, I don't know why that's showing. And I should have the headers here so I know what that's.
I would just guess.
Yeah. So yeah, right. If we look at big picture where we're at on schedule, I think that we are probably about a month or so behind schedule. Now, that is,
Make up by the contractors.
we're going to make up some of that. And then I know that the contracts probably owed a time extension as well, because, for example, a lot of the asbestos work was not part of their contract. And so they're owed a time extension for that. And in addition, during the process of trying to find the asbestos, there probably are some days there that, we should, give them and extend the contract. And so technically, if they complete it by that extended contract, they will be on time. But we're still trying to agree on the number of days that they're owed total, and it's something that we're working on.
So
Actively
the
right
fair
now.
range for Ruth's former newsletter will be 2 weeks, 2 to 4 weeks.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that one more time, Bob?
Yeah, we put out an update on this, and Ruth is merciless in pounding me for updates. And one of the things that I want to do is sort of give a range. So if it's approximately at this point, best guess 2 weeks late, that's fine, or 2 to 4 weeks. I just looking for something to put in there.
Got it. Yeah, I guess for the purposes of the newsletter, because I don't really know. I mean, because again, like the schedule, the contract duration can be and probably will be extended contractually. We could say, I think for the purposes of the newsletter, we could say right now we're looking probably a month behind the original duration that's in the contract. And I would maybe say that is subject to, time extensions and, being agreed on, I guess.
Hey, Ruth, can you make English out of that?
Do we need to comment on whether we're ahead of or behind schedule at this point in time? Can we just talk about the progress we're making in the work?
I really like to give people an accurate update of where we think we are. Yeah.
I would agree,
think
Bob,
that-
but if we don't actually know where we are, I mean, we're still trying to push. I don't know that we want to let ourselves off the hook by, declaring a delay at this point. I think we're still trying to get back to the original schedule. And so, if we knew definitively one way or another, I would agree, Bob, but I don't know that we do know. And in fact, we're trying to shorten any delay to as small or zero as possible.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah, I agree. I understand that. On the other hand, we are going to be transparent, and we're going to be semi-English. But I already told them that the asbestos stuff was, would cause a delay, and I put the dollar amount in. So we're not hiding anything here, Terry.
I'm not trying to, it's not about transparency, Bob. It's about knowing definitively what the answer is, and we don't.
Well, that's true about many things in life, Terry.
Don't we know, Al, don't we know that it's gonna be a minimum of at least 17 days for the asbestos in the potential change order that's coming at us? I mean, I'm just starting, so that gives us kind of like a baseline of maybe the minimum, we know it's gonna at least be extended by whatever,
Couple
17 days or whatever that number is, which would give us so it's 3 weeks plus.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a great point, Dick. I think yeah, so we know that the additional change directive work, the additional asbestos abatement work took a total of 17 calendar days. So I think that they're probably gonna be given that number of calendar days as a time extension. So I think maybe that's a good place to start. 3 weeks.
Yeah, we could do approximately, 14 days. That's fine with me. To be confirmed by the guys, or the team. Something soft, so, we don't get into trouble. Does that work? Dick?
Yeah. Yeah, and I think if we qualify it and we say, it's yet to be determined or something like, maybe if we had like just a word or something, this is currently being worked on or something like that, just,
Yep.
because that's really what's happening, would probably be helpful.
Yep, all right, I'll draft something, send it to you guys.
I can take a look at it. Yeah. Thanks, Bob.
Bob, Al's already done me one of the updates that he does each month for me for the newsletter, which I was going to pass on to Chris. So maybe Al could update that at some point this evening or tomorrow, and then I'll send it via you to Chris. How's that?
We haven't changed the way we should be working this stuff.
How do you mean?
Well, I need to see the stuff before it goes
Yeah,
out.
I know. I just said that Al will update it tonight, and then as I've done each month, I'll send it to you for your final clearance, and then it'll go to Chris for the newsletter.
Your final clearance.
You will have the final, very final clearance, Bob.
Thank you.
So Al, if you wouldn't mind updating that piece that you sent me, and then I can send it on to Bob and then Chris.
Sounds good. Will do.
Thanks.
Yep. Anything else on schedule?
Okay,
All right. Budget report. There's a few changes this time. Starting from column B on the left, there were 2 budget transfers from contingency. One of them is the contractor is requesting payment for the CCD abatement work. That work was approved through a construction change directive, and that work has been completed, and invoices and material invoices and timesheets were all provided. They were all reviewed, and everything appears to be substantiated. And so that is for it's around $133,000 for that abatement work. Now, that does not include general conditions for the contractor. That's something that we're working on separately. That's just for the abatement subcontractor. And again, at around $133,000. So that was transferred over from the construction contingency to the construction budget. The reason why you're only seeing 127,000 here, that's because we had a previous change order. The previous change order was a credit to the project, and so when you add it up, it shows up as 127,000. That's 127.8 here. The other one is was another transfer from the owner's contingency over to the architect's line item for 8,800, and that was for the additional services associated with the director's office. So on November 8th, FMA was authorized by the town administrator to proceed with the study of the director's office feasibility, options feasibility, and they're working on that right now. So that's 8,800. Any questions so far? All right, moving on to the right, column D1. This is where everything that's highlighted in yellow are the changes this time. And this essentially captures the invoices that we have, both October and, just basically through today. And we're gonna go over what those invoices are in a couple of slides. But generally, we got the contractors, October invoice, we have the FMA's October invoice. We have an invoice from the hygienist on the project, and so on. We'll go through those on the invoices summary. Moving over to the right, there's a column E. This is labeled planned but not contracted. It's essentially potential change orders. They could be a change order, maybe yes, maybe not. It's just trying to capture what exposures we were potentially looking at here. And it's about $105,000. And I'm gonna show you what that's comprised of next. Moving over to column G, remaining balance. The hygienist, so the asbestos hazmat monitoring, that service is complete. We have an invoice. Their last invoice for the month of October was for their final report. That was $500, as you'll see when we get to the invoices. So they're complete, and we have $9,700 left in the budget. So that's gonna move over to the contingency. I'm gonna ask Colliers to. I can't do that myself. I don't have permission to do that, but I'm gonna ask Colliers to move that over to the contingency. So that's good news there. Now, the other one is, I did notice that Colliers, like, we had a not to exceed task last year, and we were under the not to exceed by like $400. So I'm gonna move that to, also to the contingency, because that's, we realized those savings already. And then moving all the way to the right, this is, highlighted in yellow, the 90%. This is, assuming all the potential exposures where, change orders were approved as change orders, we will be at around 90% left in contingency. So that's worst case scenario based on all known factors to date. So it looks like we're good there on the contingency.
Good.
Any questions on this? Okay. All right. I'm gonna move on to the next slide. All right. So we got the contingency log. And the first two line items was change order number 1. And I'm not a big fan of this format, so I'm probably going to change this, but this is what was in the template. So the first two, it's for change order number 1. As you can see, if you can see my cursor, you see 1-1. That's change order 1. And again, that was a credit. The $133,000, we don't have a formal change order. This was authorized through a construction change directive. And this is just for the subcontractor, $133,000, and that's included within the contractor's October payment application. We have a couple other potential change orders that are going to be coming up. One of them is for the general conditions portion of the additional asbestos abatement work, where the contractor's asking for about $60,000 of general conditions, and then with markup around $65,000. We're currently looking into that to see if we can, we asked them for like additional backup, and we still need to see if we can, recommend that payment. There's a couple of other potential change orders associated with the fire protection. We're looking at isolation valves for the tanks. It's going to be around $15,000 with the markups, as well as some additional sprinklers that are needed in the building. Worst case scenario around $9,000. And then today we heard back from the abutter, George Doherty from 63 Center Street, and his fence on one of the property lines, the existing chain link fence is not going to be removed and replaced. On one of the sides, on one of his property lines, the existing chain link fence is gonna be removed, and we're gonna put a new one coated in black vinyl, but not on the other side. And he was requesting if we could replace that chain link fence. I would agree that it's not in great shape. Now, the estimated cost for that. The good thing is that we have a unit cost in the contract, so it'll be when you do the linear footage, it's gonna be around $16,000. Now, Ford and I were talking earlier, maybe this is something that we don't need to decide right now, something that we could decide later if we know we have the contingency left. But it's just something that I'm going to be tracking,
That's definitely something that can wait and see where we are at the end of the project. Again, if that's something that makes sense to do, and I don't know that yet, I would think that the town might want to do it after the project, and it'd probably be less expensive to do it outside of the project. Sometimes with these change orders, it makes sense and to wait to do some of these things later on when it doesn't cost as much. Because you don't have the markups if you're doing it yourself.
The one thing that I am not showing here, and I probably should have shown, and I'll probably show it on the next one, is you know, FMA was released for the first phase of that director's office. The other phases of that are not currently captured here, so there could be, you know, say the director's office, it's fully, you know, it's feasible and it's approved. We could be looking at a total of around $70,000. So that's something that should probably be captured here. But just to give you guys a heads up on that.
But right now, we're just looking at it in phases until we're told to do something different. So phase one is what we're working on now, and then when we get that information back, we can the selectmen will decide whether we should proceed or not.
All right, anything else?
One of my suggestions was if we're decided to go ahead with it, is do the design work now, and then complete it outside of the project later on, sort of like that fence, which would be probably less expensive, but that all can be determined as we move along.
Is there an explanation of why we have these fire protection isolation valves and the additional sprinklers? You know, why that wasn't captured in the original bid documents, or if there's another reason why, you know, it's an ad.
Yeah, so the isolation valves is something that's not required by code. However, that's something that the fire protection subcontractor suggested based on their experience with other systems. And what that is, it's, you know, we have 30,000 gallon underground tanks. And what they're saying is, you know, if you need to do work on one of them or maintenance or repairs or maintenance on one of the tanks, you could, you know, close up the other tank. And so you don't have to, you know, potentially drain both of the tanks, you know, 60,000 gallons. And at the same time, if you're working on, you know, what that would allow you to do is you can be working on one tank and then the other tank can still service the building so that you have some sort of protection. You know, while it's not going to be code compliant for the full 30 minutes, you're going to have some fire protection. And maybe that means you don't need a fire wash, you know, to pay for a fire wash. And so that's something that I'm working with, you know, DPW as well as the fire department to see if it's something that they, you know, so again, it's not a code requirement, which is why it wasn't part of the design, but it's something that, you know, maybe the town wants to consider.
And that's a decision we can, how long do we have before we have to make a decision on that?
I didn't get us, well, what Em O'Connor said is, you know, we have a window, we have time. I don't know how long that window is, but I can follow up with, just get an exact.
The logic of it can make sense, but you know, I think if it's not by code, do we have to do it? I think it makes sense probably to do it, but I think we ought to have a little discussion on that as we have more information. Also, the sprinklers, who's asking for additional sprinklers?
The subcontractors asking for additional sprinklers, they were, you know, they're putting together like their drawings for the location of the sprinklers, and they're saying, well, you know, like, you know, there's some intricacies with the way that the ceiling is, and so you need some additional sprinkler heads. And this 9,000 could probably come down because we just had a meeting on Friday. And, you know, we think that there potentially could be less needed. So it could be a little bit less, but that would be, you know, a code requirement. So we would need to, you know, to provide, you know, the ones that, you know, make sense.
You're meeting with we now, Deputy Chief is now the new inspector in the town. Dave Tiberi is retired. So you're meeting with him and for his determination on this, correct?
Well, the subcontractor is the one that's saying, you know, we need this per code because, you know, there's, you know, maybe one sprinkler head is blocked a certain way because of you know, a certain ceiling detail. And so we need an additional one here. So if they're saying that it's required by code and it's, you know, it's justified, then we would add it, you know, at that point. Yeah.
It's by code, you're right.
Yeah.
Again, that's a decision it doesn't have to be done tonight. It's a decision that we can work on and come up with a recommendation later, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, if the subcontractor, you know, once they go back, because they're going back and looking at it another time to just make sure that these are actually required.
Yep.
Once they come back, you know, it'll at that point, you know, I think, you know, if they provide the backup for it and everything, we should, you know, at that point we could approve it, because eventually we will need to approve it anyways.
Okay. Any questions?
All right, let's look at the invoices. So we have a few invoices this time, total of 9, I think, starting with the contractors, A.M. O'Connor. That's the month of October, $646,000. And what that it's made up is, you know, mostly general conditions, 100% of the demolition. We had some reinforcing materials, as well as the CCD one for the subcontractor, which is $133,000. Now, I will say that, you know, when we issued the CCD, the estimated, we tried to do it as a not to exceed, and the not to exceed was $220,000. So the contractor submitted, you know, a change order for $200,000 initially, $60,000 of which was general conditions, and we're still working on that portion of it. So I guess big picture, we're under the estimated amount for asbestos, the additional asbestos, by about $20,000, potentially less, depending on where the general conditions, you know, ends up happening with the general conditions. Any questions on the contractor's payment application? All right, then we got other invoices. We have the typical Collier's monthly invoice for the month of October, $21,154. That number doesn't change. We have the architect's October invoice for $26,000. And we have a couple other smaller invoices for the hygienist. Like I mentioned earlier, their final report came in, and this is their final invoice of $500. We also have the third-party materials testing company, Briggs Engineering. They're doing all the inspections for and testing for soils, for rebar, concrete, etc. And they have 2 invoices, one for $360, one for $350. We also have an invoice from Eversource. This was for work that they did last year, and it was for design/engineering as well as cost estimating. And they provided the plan, essentially, what tells you, you know, the equipment size and, you know, where it's going to be coming off from, etc. And that's for $3,410. And then we got the invoices for the container. These are typical every month for $398. So the total, and all these invoices are, these have all been reviewed, and make sure that everything it's justified, substantiated with backup, and I think that they all look good, and so the total will be for $698,000, $983.56.
So I'll make a motion to recommend to the town payment of the total invoices shown of $698,983.56. The motion's been made. Is there a second? Is there a second?
Second.
All right. Any discussion? All in favor? Luciana Berry,
Yes.
Ruth Townsend,
Yes.
Jerry Sobolewski,
Yes.
Nick Malcolm,
Yes.
Fort Spalding, yes. Thank you.
Awesome. All right. We talked about the contractor's invoice, and I think that's it. Citizens.
Any citizens' comments? Other than that, next, future business recommendations. Anybody want to add anything? Ruth, would you please talk about, there are 2 things I think you want to talk about, but one, talk about what you're doing with students in the education program, which is exceptional.
So yeah, first of all, the community center club is going well. We had another meeting last Wednesday where Ed, Tobin and Al joined us. Ed is one of the superintendents, one of the people in charge at the site. and they went through concrete with us, which actually was very, very interesting. Who knew that these guys could make concrete exciting? So we had probably about 10 or so students there. So we've been working in the townhouse on the nights when it's dark, because there's not really much that we can show the kids, show the students over there. But Luciana's husband, who is also an architect, as well as Ed and Al and Chris and another couple of people from O'Connor, are hosting the students on Wednesday afternoon. So this Wednesday afternoon, just before Thanksgiving, at the construction site for a visit to see what they've heard about, what they've learned about so far, and see that in person. So they're going to be doing that. And then on the 29th of November, we're going to be back in the townhouse, and our architects are going to be joining us. And they are going to go over some of the software that they've used for designing the community centre, so that the students can actually see the design, see the site, see the building itself, and explore that. And then we have another session planned for the 13th of December, which is going to be a construction task for the students to get involved in, and kind of like a team building game. And then in the new year, we're planning on using all the early releases from school to get the kids onto the construction site again. So that's the Community Centre Club. The other thing that I was going to raise was it was actually Beth McGuire that raised this with me, she's been involved with the Cultural Council, and she raised that there is a Cultural Facilities Fund, which are grants to support the acquisition, design, repair, rehabilitation, renovation, expansion, or construction of non-profit cultural facilities. So I just wanted to raise that as a possible funding or grant that we might be able to apply for. I don't know lots of details right now. I do have the page, so I don't know if there's somebody that is the best person to look into that further for us to see whether or not that might be additional funding that we can acquire.
And I don't know what's required in their application, for a grant writer. I don't know who in the town, other than Barry. I know he was working, but do we have a grant writer that can help do that? So we ought to look into that.
Yeah, the capital grant is up to around 200,000. So
and we could be using it for.
It said, let me find it. It can be acquisition of a cultural facility or site, new construction, additions to an existing structure, renovations or repairs to an existing structure, fixed integrated equipment, or any combination of the above.
So we would probably have to specify exactly where we would use the money. So we'd have to explore that.
Yep.
Okay, so you're gonna.
Who should I reach out to?
I guess I talked to Michael Blanchard and talk to him and see what his recommendation would be. Barry also has had experience in this, and he would be another person.
Okay,
I can come up with.
Okay, I'll get started on that straight after the holidays.
Great, thank you. November 30th, the selectmen are having a meeting. I haven't seen the agenda, but I believe we're going to be there to talk to them about the abatement change order and where we are with that, and any particular questions that they may have. So I think that's the subject for them. So that's November 30th. I'll let you know as soon as I see an agenda, and I'll send that out. And also our next meeting is scheduled for Monday, December 11, at 6:30. Anything else? If not, I'll accept a motion to adjourn.
Can I,
Who's that, Dick?
Oh, you
yeah,
muted.
I'm sorry. I just want to, I'm sorry, before we adjourn, I just want to go back with the newsletter and the schedule, and I understand it's, informing the townspeople of our schedule, and if there's a delay, I understand all that. I think we got to be a little careful though that when you put dates out, that you're setting up an expectation, and to be overly conservative with these extension dates. That's all.
Thank you. Motion to adjourn. Is there a motion to adjourn?
A motion?
Is there a second? All
Second,
those in favor, Luciana Berti,
Yes.
Ruth Townsend,
yes.
Jerry Sobolewski,
Yes.
Dick Malcolm, and Ford Spalding. Yes, thank you, everybody, for coming, and I look forward to seeing you actually in, I think it's 3 weeks.
Thanks, everyone.